time in 18 years, a new top Republican in the Senate. The secret vote that put John Thune in charge and rejected the MAGA alternative. We expect to hear from Thune any minute now. And more drama to come, potentially, from House Republicans who are huddled behind closed doors as we speak. Plus, Secretary who? Lawmakers' response to Trump's pick for defense secretary. Surprised, confused, baffled by the choice of a veteran-turned-TV host. But choosing Peter Hegseth is one thing. Will he face a rare fight for confirmation? But we begin with the extraordinary meeting between President Biden and President-elect Trump, perhaps most notable for what it was not. No outward signs of tension, no awkward exchanges. But we should be clear, the public portion of that meeting lasted less than 2 minutes. We don't have a read on what's going on because it is still going on. No cameras inside, but it's been about 2 hours that those men have been together. Both of them suggesting in the public portion of this a willingness to put a brutal campaign aside for the good of the country.
Looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
thank you
back.
Very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough. And it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today. And I appreciate it very much. And a transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get. And I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome.
I want to bring in NBC's Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. NBC's Garrett Haake joins me from Washington. Stuart Stevens is senior advisor for the Lincoln Project and was chief strategist for Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. Good to see you all. Gabe, still going on. What, 2 hours in? What more do we know?
Actually, Chris, I can just tell you, just within the past few moments, literally as you were going on the air, we've just received word that President-elect Trump has left the White House. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, as you said, started near the top of the 11 o'clock hour, and here we are just after 1 p.m. That is longer than the meeting between former President Obama and Donald Trump back in 2016. Now, we're still awaiting details on what was said in this meeting. You just played the video that we got from the top of the meeting where President Biden said welcome back to the president-elect. He also talked about the importance of a smooth transfer of power, and President-elect Trump saying politics can be tough. So we had been awaiting here outside the West Wing a large contingency of reporters to see if President-elect Trump might have come outside, offered any remarks. He did not do that. He quietly left, again, just a few moments ago. We did not get video of President-elect Trump's arrival, and we don't believe we had any of his departure. So it was a quiet entrance, quiet exit, very cordial meeting so far, as we know, between the two leaders, but we're trying to get more information about what was said inside. We can tell you that both chiefs of staff, Jeff Zients, President Biden's chief of staff, and Susie Wiles, President-elect Trump's soon-to-be chief of staff, they were both in the room. And we also know that First Lady Jill Biden had written a note to Melania Trump and handed that to Donald Trump when they arrived, again offering that her office would help make this a smooth transition. So certainly, potentially a very consequential meeting here that we're hoping to get more information on. A White House briefing is scheduled just within the next few minutes that is set to include National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. So perhaps we might get some more information there. We did know that President Biden and the administration as a whole had made a large case and said that they plan to make the case to the incoming administration the importance of maintaining aid to Ukraine. We'll see if that did come up during their roughly 2-hour conversation again here in the Oval Office. But Chris, once again, the breaking news that President-elect Donald Trump has just left the Oval Office after a roughly 2-hour meeting, Chris.
Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. Thank you very much for that. So, Stuart, I mean, it's uncharacteristic in a couple ways, right? This is a really tough campaign. A lot of rough words were exchanged between both men about the other guy. This was very cordial, at least the part we saw of it, the comments that they made. Uncharacteristic, certainly, for Donald Trump to make a deliberate decision to avoid cameras, not seen going in or going out. But I wonder what you make of the dynamic you saw and what you witnessed today in terms of, frankly, just the peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah, I'm in the pro-normalization camp. I think as much as we can have a normal transition, as much as we can have a normal presidency, that would be obviously to the country's good. You know, one side is going to be normal. The question is, what will the Donald Trump side be? So in many ways, it's up to them, but you just knew that Joe Biden was going to do this. This is who Joe Biden is. He respects these institutions. He respects what it means to be an incoming president, what it means to be an outgoing president. So I think it was a serious moment that, look, let's see how long it lasts, but it's positive at face value.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, he's a different person than he was when he met with Barack Obama right back in 2016. He didn't know anything about being president for sure, but he didn't know anything about being on the inside of government. He was coming in from a completely different place. It's different, obviously, today. He has 4 years of the presidency under his belt. Does it surprise you at all that he even decided to do it?
Oh, I think that he wants to show to a certain degree that he can be a normal president to a certain degree. There's a limit here how much Donald Trump can control what Donald Trump does. And ultimately, it's going to come back to his sort of lifelong pattern of chaos, of just not being the person who's going to fit in. But look, I think right now, this is useful for him. And it's good for the country. But, you know, you're going to see these weird appointments and all of this that it's really just going to be a indicator of what the next 4 years are going to be like. And that's not going to be normal.
Yeah, I guess, will it be aspirational? Will it be an indicator? What will actually follow this, Garrett? But look, there is a practical aspect to these kinds of meetings, president to president-elect, conversations that we may learn nothing about until the books are written, and maybe not even then. And also, maybe as or more important in some ways for the other two people in the room, as Gabe pointed out, the current and incoming chiefs of staff. Give us your take on this meeting.
Yeah, Chris, I actually don't think we should be surprised at how long this meeting went or how cordial, at least it appeared to be, because that's what we saw from Donald Trump's last meeting when he was the incoming president-elect with Barack Obama. That meeting was supposed to go 20 or 30 minutes. It ended up going something like 90. Trump had sort of fond things to say about Obama immediately afterwards, and in fact would often reference their conversation as president, saying that it was Obama who told him that North Korea would be among the most pressing issues that he was going to have to deal with as president. The opportunity to pass along that kind of sensitive information. They're talking about a lot more than just the Wi-Fi password in the mansion. I mean, this is an opportunity for people who are going to have to safeguard and do something with the nation's deepest secrets. And especially now where you have the U.S., at least to some degree, involved in two hot wars in other parts of the world, getting Trump, who has foregone the kind of briefings that would be available to him as a candidate and as president-elect up until this point, in part because he didn't want to be accused of leaking anything. He has a lot to get up to speed on. So that meeting is particularly important. And also for his top aide, Susie Wiles, who's been credited with running a very tight ship during his campaign, but who, other than a brief tenure working for Ron DeSantis' administration down in Florida, has been out of the governing part of politics for quite some time. Getting her back up to speed is for the chief-to-chief part of this meeting, I think is probably equally important as Donald Trump tries to set up his new White House.
So also with me is Douglas Brinkley, a presidential historian, author, and professor at Rice University. It's good to see you, Doug. Look, of course, Garrett just laid out very well what sort of the practical and operational purpose of this meeting can be. But when you look at the picture, the two men shaking hands, smiling at times, that blazing fire between them, and I mentioned this to Stuart, as a show of a constitutional, a peaceful transition, does the video speak 1,000 words? And if so, what does it say to the country and the world?
Well, the 2024 was a strange and brutal political year. I mean, Joe Biden not doing his Super Bowl commercial, the moving of the presidential debates to the spring instead of the fall, the deer in the headlights performance by Biden, Harris suddenly becoming the Democratic Party nominee, Trump being shot at Butler. We can go on and on and on. It's been kind of a surreal carnival, and this has a calming effect. It's towards the end of the year. Thanksgiving's coming. Some people feel, thank goodness the election's over, and just seeing the photos of them two together in a genial fashion, assumably talking a lot about public policy and world affairs, it's heartwarming. It reminds us that we can go on. It's the absolute right thing for both Trump and Biden to be doing right now.
I also wonder, because this is a president who elected a president and frankly, in many ways, elected him because of the fact that he doesn't follow norms. He doesn't speak the way past presidents have spoken. He doesn't treat other people the way past presidents have. And yet here you have, whether you want to call it the most normal, the most constitutional kind of event, does it say that maybe there is still relevance in them?
Well, it's certainly a blink here of civility, which is awful nice. But look, let's not be mistaken in what's happened here. You said, Chris, quite accurately, you will have to wait till the transcripts of their conversation or books come out a long time from now, probably. There might be leaks, but I'm sure each of them are rolling their eyes on certain things the other says. Joe Biden has spent a lifetime fighting on behalf of NATO, he is one of the great Cold Warriors, and he, I am sure, is trying to convince President Trump to stay the course with Zelensky and the Ukraine, to remind Trump not to abandon the Atlantic Alliance. There's probably was talk about climate change and whether it's really smart to pull out of international agreements or not. These kind of issues and the border. And, you know, look, whoever Trump's picking right now, their big thing is MAGA loyalty. So if you're a Trump person, you're loving Trump's picks. If you're a Biden or Harris person, you're looking at his picks as being rock bottom remainders, not up to speed on the top gears, not people that should be picked. So there's great divergency going on all around this right now. And the fact that you have Michelle Obama not wanting to meet with Jill Biden, still animosity about the Justice Department raid on Mar-a-Lago, tells you there's a lot of bad blood going on here. But it doesn't behoove Biden to not do this. After all, he may have to pardon his son, Hunter. He would love it if Trump would do it for him. But Trump might say, look, you know, I'll stay quiet about that. Do what you have to do. They're also going to be the stars of the inaugural, particularly, you know, the Trumps. But Biden will be there. Will others? Will Bill and Hillary Clinton show up for the inaugural? Will Nancy Pelosi be there, or AOC or Bernie Sanders? Will the inaugural see a boycott of it by a whole group of Democrats, where the party will be split in two of Democrats who go to the inaugural and ones who don't go? Biden's cast his lot here that he thinks that the best strategy is to show up, be there, grant the transition courtesies to Trump, and go out as a class act, or his administration, not one filled with grievances.
Yeah, and as you say, we'll have to wait for those leaks, and I'm sure if they come, Garrett will have them for us. Feel free to interrupt my show at any point, Garrett, if you get any inside info on those 2 hours the men spent together. But, Stuart, let me ask you about something else, because the president-elect is also had a meeting with House Republicans this morning, and I want to play part of what one Texas Republican had to say about it.
There's no question he's the leader of our party. So now he's got a mission statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is, we need to embrace it. All of it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. That's it.
Stuart, is he right?
Well, I think that was a pretty humiliating bit of tape there for somebody to say you're running for Congress and you're just going to abdicate any decision that you might make. Why do that? I mean, why not just have somebody out there who is just, going to call it in and check a box? It's not what Congress is supposed to be. It's not the role of 3 independent elements of the government. This just shows the reason people say stuff like this is to curry favor with Donald Trump, because ultimately Donald Trump is an authoritarian. Ultimately, he wants this kind of obsequious deference, this kind of North Korean. This is what someone would have said in North Korea. It's not what should be said as an American. It's not how America was constructed. It's not why America was invented. It's not consistent with the idea of America. But look, he's a guy, an obscure congressman from Texas. He's going to say anything he can to get more favor with Donald Trump.
Time will tell about all of these things, but Garrett Haake, Doug Brinkley, Stuart Stevens, great conversation laying out in real time on Capitol Hill. Last hour, Senate Republicans made a huge decision, choosing South Dakota Senator John Thune as their next majority leader following 2 secret ballots. The longtime Mitch McConnell ally beat out John Cornyn, as well as MAGA favorite Rick Scott. Now, at the same time, House Republicans are holding their own leadership elections. Speaker Mike Johnson potentially facing a challenge from hardline conservatives. All of them getting a personal thank you from Trump himself ahead of that vote.
It's nice to win. I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. We worked with a lot of you to get you in, and you helped me, and you helped me too. We won, which is great, because Republicans aren't supposed to be winning the majority, Marjorie. You know that, right?
NBC's Ali Vitale is reporting on Capitol Hill. Also with us, Annalise Keller, Republican strategist and former communications director to Republican Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado. Good to have both of you. So, Ali, let's talk first about the reaction to Thune. And do we know anything about what went on behind closed doors?
Well, Chris, I've been standing in that hallway that you're showing on the screen for the last several hours because Republican lawmakers have been at this since about 9 o'clock this morning, voting behind closed doors by a secret ballot, going through 2 rounds of balloting to ultimately come out where the smart money on the Hill probably would have told you that they'd land all along, with Senator John Thune assuming the leadership mantle for this Senate Republican conference. And he's doing so at a pivotal moment. With McConnell leaving this post, it's the first time in 18 years that they've had to consider someone other than McConnell of Kentucky for this role. So a real moment, not just in the Trump era, but for this Senate Republican group to figure out who should lead them. Of course, Thune cuts an interesting profile here, in large part because what he always had to do in order to get to this place was mend fences with the president-elect, who he had at times butted heads with. For example, even just a few months ago, earlier this year, I remember being at Senator Tim Scott's presidential campaign launch, where John Thune was one of the key people endorsing Scott as the way forward for the Republican Party. Of course, a lot has happened between the beginning of the year and now. Thune has worked to mend fences with Trump and obviously did so well enough that he was able to notch well more than the 27 votes, the majority of the senators that he needed in order to get to this post. The reason we haven't seen him yet is because they're just finishing rounding out the leadership slate, still doing it behind closed doors, and still going through the process of listening to people do nominating speeches and then voting by secret ballot. So we should see these folks start wrapping it up in the next few minutes, we hope, and then we will see the new leadership slate come out and hopefully talk about what they're going to do to try to hit the ground running with Trump in the White House and with control, most likely, of the House as well.
Annalise, what do you think we can expect from a John Thune-led Senate?
You know, I think this is going to be a really hard job. As Ali mentioned, this has been a vacant position for 18 years. My time in the Senate, the only leader of the Senate Republicans that I knew was Mitch McConnell. There is going to be a really big power vacuum that is going to need to be filled here by Senator John Thune coming in. He was the favorite for the choice to be majority leader. So I don't think there are a ton of huge surprises. But there was also MAGA World, who put a lot of weight behind a Rick Scott candidate. So I think it's really telling that senators chose Senator Thune as opposed to Rick Scott for the incoming year. But, what I think is going to be really important is that Thune is going to be demanded by President Trump-elect to be very quick with his agenda when it comes to things like immigration and tax policy. There is not going to be a lot of leniency from President-elect Trump on any delays when he comes into the Senate.
What should we read, Ali Vitale, into the fact that a MAGA favorite got eliminated immediately?
Well, those are sort of the rules of this process at this point. If you think back a few years ago, Scott also challenged McConnell. That was then, at the time, seen as a long shot bid, but it was more to send a message of the growing power of the pro-MAGA faction within the Senate Republican ranks. At that point, Scott was able to notch 10 votes from within the conference. We know that more MAGA-esque members have been elected since then, and so the voting pool today was almost more stacked in MAGA favor. But even given that, Scott was only able to notch, I believe it was 13 votes on the first balloting round, and then the rules sort of come into play. If you got the least amount of votes on the first balloting round out of the three people who were running, the rules dictate that you got to drop out, and that's how you ended up with a John v. John, Thune v. Cornyn, which is sort of how people thought this race was always going to shake out anyway. I think it's more important to talk about the role that Scott could play as an outside factor, because, and Annalise knows this well, there is and has been lately more of an agitating outside grouping in this Senate conference. And it's going to be interesting to see, given the way that those people are more aligned with Trump and have personal relationships with him as well, is it possible that we start seeing a lot of intra-Republican fights as they try to move forward and enact an agenda? I imagine that these are going to be ways that Trump tries to continue to exert leverage or pressure on a Senate Majority Leader John Thune to try to get things done at the pace and in the fashion with which he wants them to be done in. But again, the Senate and Congress, and you guys were just having this conversation with Stuart Stevens and others. You've got Troy Nehls on the House side of this building saying, hey, let's do everything that Trump says. If he says jump, let's jump how high. On the Senate side of this building, they have in the past wanted to keep and observe their independence as a deliberative body. Yes, they will march in lockstep with Trump because they are Republican majorities under him. But how does that work in real time? Are the policy alignments there? All of those are real questions that we're going to have to wait to see answers for.
Yeah, key questions, Annalise. As both of you have pointed out, this is the first time that we've seen a new majority leader in the past 18 years for the Republicans. So, I mean, look, it's always been sort of lore on the Hill that the upper chamber is more civil than the House. And of course, you've got fewer people to deal with, fewer people to make trouble, 100 versus 435. But do you think that John Thune gets a honeymoon? Do they give him a little time to find his footing? What are you going to be looking for in the opening days, weeks, and maybe months of this new Congress?
I don't really think that there is going to be a honeymoon here at all, because they are going to have to act so quickly to confirm these nominations that are coming fast and furious. Very interestingly, President-elect Trump indicated that he wanted to go forward with potential recess appointments, and all of the candidates running for majority leader at the time indicated quickly that they would be willing to do that. Essentially, that's a constitutional authority granted to the Senate to vet and confirm nominees, and they are saying that, if they're not moving quick enough, that there is a possibility that they would take some extraordinary measures here to circumvent the Senate entirely and allow some of these nominees to be confirmed outside of the Senate. So I'm watching that.
Annalise Keller, Ali Vitale, thank you both. And still ahead, strong reaction to Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, including a single rise to President-elect Trump's choice to head the Department of Defense. Fox News host Peter Hegseth, a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, but largely inexperienced to lead the world's most powerful military and one of the largest employers in the world. Even Republican senators were clearly caught off guard by the news.
Trump just announced that he's nominating Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host, as his Secretary of Defense.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on that?
I just said, wow.
Pete Hegseth was just nominated to be Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth from Fox News. Do you have any reaction to this?
Who? First of all, it surprised me. I didn't see it coming. I don't know who did. I don't know and I read, the thing I read the most every day are stories about the military, news stories. So I did not see it coming.
NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is following this story on the ground near Mar-a-Lago. NBC's Julie Sirkin is on Capitol Hill, and retired four-star General Barry McCaffrey is an MSNBC military analyst. Okay, Vaughn, Pete Hegseth, wow. A lot of surprise on the Hill, unfamiliar to many of the power brokers there. What more can you tell us about him, and what do we know about why him? Why this choice?
Again, those were the reactions of Republican lawmakers up on Capitol Hill. Pete Hegseth's name was not in the conversation as the potential head of the Pentagon. Let's be very clear. He is a decorated veteran. He served in the Army National Guard as a major. He served multiple tours in Afghanistan and in Iraq. But he has never held the leadership position within the Pentagon or within the Army. And that is where some of this concern over the extent or his lack of experience in these leadership capacities at the Department of Defense is paramount. For Pete Hegseth, he spent the last decade as the co-host of the weekend edition of Fox and Friends. And he has openly suggested that women have not contributed, women in combat have not contributed to the U.S. military forces' effectiveness. And you heard that response, which he said that podcast that was recorded that you just played, it should be clear, it was published online just this last Thursday. So this is new remarks from Pete Hegseth, in which he was asked about how he would eliminate the so-called wokeness from the military. And his response was that the Secretary of Defense should have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff fired, as well as generals and admirals who adhere to such, again, quote, wokeism policies. And so I think it is emblematic of the type of Pentagon that Pete Hegseth has publicly said that should be implemented. Now, the question here is whether he could actually get confirmed by this Republican U.S. Senate, and then to what extent would he actually seek to remove some of the top military officials who would report directly to him.
So, General, the head of a leading veterans organization wrote this, quote, Hegseth is undoubtedly the least qualified nominee for Secretary of Defense in American history and the most overtly political, adding kind of a dire warning, brace yourself, America. Does that feel a little Chicken Little to you? The sky is falling, or do you share his concerns about this choice?
Well, look, I know and admire Paul Rieckhoff, and clearly this came out of left field. I know almost everyone involved in national security issues knew nothing about them. But going into it with Harvard, Princeton, and a combat infantry badge earned as a rifle platoon leader in combat are pretty good opening credentials. He's written books. He's very active in the veterans community. He's very smart. He's telegenic. He's in tune with President-elect Trump. And we should assume he will be concerned. So the questions are not whether he can run the bureaucracy of a 2.1 million person organization. You know, they get General Jack Keane or Eric Carilla or someone will be in there to buttress him on understanding how to manipulate the levers of power. The question will be his policies and those of the president-elect. Will we turn Ukraine over to a murderous thug, Putin? What will happen in terms of peace in the Middle East? Will we abandon NATO, the foundation of our national security? Never mind the culture wars of, the U.S. Armed Forces is the biggest merit-based organization on the face of the earth. Women, minorities play a vital role in that defense. We got to question his policies.
Well, let's talk a little bit about who he would have under him to help to execute those policies. Obviously, there's been a lot of reporting, and NBC News has this reporting that Donald Trump is expected to replace top military officers, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He wants generals he believes will be more aligned with his own goals. And then in addition to that, he has been a very outspoken voice against women in combat. Let me play what he had to say about that recently.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. We've all served with women, and they're great. It just, our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable.
I need to interrupt this and go to Capitol Hill, where the newly elected leader of the majority in the Senate, John Thune, is speaking. Let's listen.
It's a new day in the United States Senate, and it's a new day in America. The American people have loudly rejected the failed policies of the Biden, Harris, Schumer agenda. And this Republican team is united. We are on one team. We are excited to reclaim the majority and to get to work with our colleagues in the House to enact President Trump's agenda. We have a mandate from the American people. A mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities. We will make sure that the President and his team have the tools and the support that they need to enforce border security laws and to remove the violent criminals who are wreaking havoc in every one of our states. We will work to make America prosperous again by streamlining the bureaucratic machine and overturning costly Biden-Harris regulations. And we will work to restore American energy dominance. Not just our energy security, but energy dominance, which will lower costs and bolster our national security. I'm excited to get to work with this team right away. And I want to thank my colleagues who placed their faith in me to serve as leader, and to those who were supporting another candidate. I promise to be a leader who serves the entire Republican conference. We'll have an ambitious agenda, and we'll take each and every Republican working together to be successful. With that, I want to turn things over to Senator John Barrasso, the newly elected Republican whip.
Thank you. On election night, America saw the remaking of the Republican Party for the better. This election was about the answering to the question of, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And the American people said no. Only 1 in 4 Americans thought that the country was heading in the right direction. And you've seen the Republican Party grow in terms of hardworking middle-class families, in terms of minorities, in terms of young people, in terms of families struggling to get by. In the last 3 weeks before the election, I was all over the country with President Trump, with J.D. Vance, as well as a number of our Senate candidates. One of the stories that stuck with me was a woman in Michigan who talked about the fact that she was embarrassed to let her husband know that she had to go to the local food bank in order to get by. Republicans listened to those stories. Democrats were focused on President Trump. Republicans were focused on the needs of the American people, people who wanted to get prices down, wanted to secure the border, wanted us to unleash American energy, people who wanted to make America look and be strong once again around the world. That's what the Republicans listened to, that's what we're responding to, and we are now working together to make sure we can put America back on track.
The newly elected Republican Conference Chair is the Senator from Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton.
Thank you, Senator Thune. I'm looking forward to working with Senator Thune and the rest of this leadership team. I'm very grateful for the confidence that my peers placed in me. We all remember what it was like when President Trump was in office and we had Republicans in charge of the Senate. We had low prices, we had high wages, we had a secure border, we had a strong military, we had a peaceful, stable world. Starting on January 3rd, that's what we'll all be working to build again with President Trump, with Mike Johnson and the rest of the House Republicans on behalf of the American people. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tom. The newly elected Republican Policy Chair is the senator from West Virginia, Senator Shelley Moore Capito.
Thank you, and congratulations to our new leader, John Thune. He will be a strong voice, as he has been in the past, as the whip, and I look forward to serving with him and with all of our leadership team. I want to thank the others that ran. We had a really strong, healthy discussion, and we've all come out united and friends. And one of the people that was in our discussion is one of the people that is going to, although he didn't say anything, his presence was very much felt, and that is the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance. I think the fact that he not only was a voting member of our conference, but also in there with us every step of the way to make sure that the direction that we're going to go as a united conference, and with me leading the policy issues and all of us working together, that we're going to have a united voice. And I'll say one thing about the election. I've said this on all my local stations. What I think the biggest issue was, and there are big ones, border and national security and others, it is literally the American family, the mom and the dad, the grandmother, whoever it is, going to the grocery store. We do it all the time, every week, and we could see, all of us could see, the escalating costs of something so very basic to us, just the cost of food, and hearing from the Vice President in her campaign, the economy's doing great, don't worry. And so we hear those voices, we hear them loud and clear, and those are the voices that we're going to respond to, along with President Trump, through the next several years.
Thanks, Shelley. The newly elected Senate Republican Conference Vice Chair is the senator from Oklahoma, Senator James Lankford.
Hey, congratulations to John Thune. We're looking forward to his great leadership there. Republicans were asked a very simple thing. Can you get us back on track? Over 70% of the country right now believes the country is on the wrong track. Our task is going to be very, very simple: to defend our values, to be able to strengthen us as a nation, and to be able to bring prosperity to people that are really struggling right now. That's a primary issue for us, and all of those things are things that we're going to get onto immediately, because the American people have spoken and said we do not like the direction that the country is going, so let's get us back on a better direction. So this leadership team, President Trump, J.D. Vance, we're headed in a direction to be able to get the country back on the track that she is looking for.
Thanks, James. And the newly elected chairman of the Senate National Republican Senatorial Committee Chair is the senator from South Carolina, and he is already planning on expanding our majority in 2026. So, Senator Tim Scott.
Hey, brother. Without any question, President Trump set out to make sure that Americans felt like this country and the American dream was alive and well and there for them. From the border to fixing the economy, to solving the issue of crime and restoring confidence on the global stage, President Trump has been very clear on his agenda. Our goal with our leader, John Thune, is to make sure that we achieve those objectives. My passion is making sure that we defend our current seats and expand the map and expand our majority so that President Trump does not have 2 years with a Republican majority in the Senate, and he has 4 years in control of making sure that America's agenda comes home to each and every household.
Thanks, Tim. A couple quick questions.
Do you have any concerns about President Trump's cabinet picks so far, and what advice will you give him when it comes to choosing nominees who will pass Senate confirmation?
Well, as you know, the Senate has an advise and consent role under the Constitution, so we will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda.
Leader Thune, you've said that recess appointments are on the table. That's a key demand from President-elect Donald Trump. Will you move forward with that?
Well, what we're going to do is make sure that we are processing his nominees in a way that gets them into those positions so they can implement his agenda. How that happens remains to be seen. You know, obviously, we want to make sure our committees have confirmation hearings like they typically do, and that these nominees reported out to the floor. But I've said this, and I mean it, that we expect a level of cooperation from the Democrats to work with us to get these folks installed. And obviously, we're going to look at explore all options to make sure that they get moved and that they get moved quickly.
Will the legislative filibuster remain unchanged under your tenure?
Yes.
How do you intend to balance maintaining the independence of the Senate with passing the president-elect's agenda?
Well, I mean, the Senate, as you know, is by the founders' design, a place where the minority has a voice in our process, and we will do the job that the founders intended us to do in the United States Senate, and that the American people intend us to do. And that, right now, after this mandate election coming out of the American people, is to work with this president on an agenda that unwinds a lot of the damage of the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda and puts in place new policies that will move our country forward in a different direction.
Republicans taking control of the Senate and introducing their new leadership team, including Majority Leader, who will be the Majority Leader, John Thune. He called it a new day in America, laying out the priorities that President Trump has made very clear he has held. That includes border security, includes the economy and energy, what they call energy dominance. Remember when he said he was going to be a leader, or he was going to be a dictator on day one? Drill, drill, drill is what President-elect Trump said. But let me bring in Ali Vitale, who was watching there from the Hill. You know, a couple of things. I was listening to James Langford. He is right. Several of them are right, talking about the economy, that Americans care about grocery prices, that a vast majority think America is on the wrong track. When he said that they're going to fix it and it will be simple, I'm not so sure about that. But what is your takeaway from what you heard from every member of that new leadership team?
I also share your skepticism on that, because it's not Congress who can directly dictate the price of groceries. And so that's going to be one of the key components as we start seeing this Congress move forward in earnest, finishing the business of this so-called lame duck period, but then also looking ahead to how they're going to lay the groundwork to hit the ground running, to carry the metaphor, when Trump gets back in the White House. I do think it's worth pausing, though, and I think maybe to a casual viewer, this is not as stark as it is to those of us who spend on a near weekly basis time at doing these kinds of press conferences with leadership from both parties. But the fact that Mitch McConnell was not a face that was there, the fact that he was not the person leading this cohort of Republicans, is a stark moment. It is an inflection point, not just for Republicans, but for the Senate writ large. He is someone who is steeped in the procedure of this building. He is a tactician. And that's why it's important to not just mark the end of the McConnell era, but also make note of the fact that Thune is someone who was the number two to McConnell for many years here, really studying and seeing the way that McConnell ruled over Republicans and this chamber. It is only going to get more unruly. We were talking about this before the press conference, the ways that the so-called MAGA faithful may try to bend this body to its will at various points. The way that Thune reacts at those moments is going to be really telling, because he is someone who was willing in the past to criticize or part ways with the then former president, now president-elect. He clearly did not want to take the chance today of weighing in when it came to some of the people that we've already seen nominated. Instead, he just said they want to go through a quick nominating process, whether that ends up looking like putting nominees together in batches and trying to process them more quickly that way. Will it be a clear rubber stamp when it comes to putting together this Trump cabinet and just confirming them so they can get in their roles? We'll see. The Senate, as you know so well, Chris, is a place where if all 100 senators decide to do something in a way that it's not typically done just to speed it along, they can do that. So Thune sort of laying out that marker early, saying we're going to do this in the fastest way possible, but we don't yet know how it's going to go. I think the other thing that I was listening for there, and you heard him give a short, flat answer when he was asked about it. He said, will you preserve the Senate filibuster? Thune flatly said yes. That's something that Democrats, I think, are listening to closely. Other Republicans might be listening to closely, because that's where we always talk about hitting that 60 vote threshold to pass key pieces of legislation, not that simple majority. That's going to be important, too, for the way that Republicans go forward in enacting their agenda, because they have a majority on the Senate side, but it's not a 60 vote majority. And that's going to be key.
Yeah, in addition to being McConnell's number 2, he's somebody who's been around for a while, 25 years on the Hill, including in the House. And then I think it was 2005 he got elected to the Senate. So he has some institutional knowledge for sure. Ali Vitale, as you do, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. Thank you so